All right, today we're going to talk about perfectionism and how this may manifest in fitness or bodybuilding and how to manage some of the common features. This is a shorter episode, so stick around till at least the third feature because I think it gets overlooked. But for now, let's get to the episode. All right, so let's define perfectionism in this context being something related to fitness and or bodybuilding. Perfectionism in fitness and bodybuilding involves flawlessness or striving for excessively high standards in terms of our physique, our training, our nutrition, which can also have downstream effects, not limited to things like procrastination, burnout, dissatisfaction when our goals or high standards aren't met, and this could also lead to difficulty making progress. Let's also take a look at something that may be contributing to sort of perfectionistic tendencies. It is called the Big Five model of personality. Now, this is a lexical model, and it basically outlines common personality factors that we all share to varying degrees. The first one being openness to new experience. This just generally means you're open to trying new things. C, so it's the acronym sort of OCEAN, so openness. C stands for conscientiousness, which will be really important for this episode. So this often involves high levels of thoughtfulness, good impulse control, goal-directed behavior, and these things can be very associated with perfectionism. Then you have things like extroversion versus introversion, how extroverted or introverted you are, agreeableness or disagreeableness, and then you have neuroticism or emotional stability. So in perfectionism, high levels of conscientiousness is going to drive high standards, and those high standards may, in a person with high neuroticism, drive anxiety, worry, and stress. And I find that those two things paired together sort of feed into perfectionistic tendencies. Let's get into the meat of this. What are the four features that I see that can be some of the most problematic for a person with perfectionism? Number one thing being rigidity. So rigidity is an inability to adapt our habits or activities to fluctuations in normal areas of life. Those normal areas of life being like family, friends, school, work. So in rigidity, you don't have that bend don't break mentality. It's more of a I don't break, everything else around me does break mentality. With rigid and inflexible routines, things must be done your way. If they are not done your way, then they are either not done at all, or the thing that is sort of impeding your sort of rigid standard, that sort of gets pushed away, which can cause sort of distress and dysfunction in that particular area. The way that this might manifest is you have a particular meal structure, you have a particular training day, and if something at work comes up or something with family life comes up, where this becomes sort of maladaptive is that you are unable to modify your training and or your meal structure to sort of help accommodate and meet the goals in these other areas of life. So what's the helpful tip here? I think more often than not, whenever we become rigid, whenever we realize that we can control a particular set of variables, and by controlling those variables, we get particular outcomes, we solely focus on those and we don't allow room for flexibility. So yes, number one, becoming more flexible, but where do we start with that? I think for rigidity, we zoom into a particular time point and put all of our focus there. So let's just go to meal structure. Like let's say you're having 4 meals a day and your wife, spouse, girlfriend, whatever, asks you to go out to eat. Now, if you are, if you are very serious about your training, if you are new to fitness, but you've also seen some great results from, following a particular meal plan, you might get pretty rigid in terms of what you are and what you are not willing to eat. And so for whoever, friend, significant other, to ask you to sort of move away from that structure, that may make you feel a particular way. It may make you feel anxious or worried about the outcomes. And so we are sort of zoomed in to that one singular moment, and we are placing a lot of importance on it. So the thing you want to do here is you want to take that time point that you're zooming in on, that one single meal, and you want to zoom out and take a look at the broader picture. What's the broader picture? When you think about it, if you're having let's say 4 meals a day and your significant other asks you to go out to eat, if you zoom in on that one meal, and it's sort of off plan, although maybe you know the restaurant, maybe you can do some modifications, but you still feel like you need to say no, zoom out a little bit. Is that one meal that important? You have 4 meals a day, 7 days in a week, that's 28 meals. If you shift your meal plan just this one time, you're on point like 97% of the time. So with rigidity, I think oftentimes we zoom in on a single time point and forget that if we zoom out over the course of from like let's say a single time point to over the course of the day, to over the course of the week, to over the course of months. Modifying or changing a single thing isn't really going to impact how we perform. Just remember, if your routine is interrupted and you feel like saying no, try and zoom out from that single time point. And like, let's say, for example, in the case of this meal, you're still hitting 97% of your other meals. That's still an A. You're still good to go. Number two, often with perfectionism comes excessive self-criticism or having sort of that inner critic. I think we all know this. I think we all know that we are often our own worst critic. We talk down to ourselves. We wouldn't honestly demean other people like we demean ourselves in our heads. Sometimes, honestly, I don't think these things are conscious. They almost manifest out of nowhere in our heads. I think we develop sort of core beliefs over the course of our life that if we don't identify them, name them, and challenge them, can become really difficult and can really shape or color the tone of the voice in our heads. So the answer sort of to self-criticism, is to take what you're saying to yourself in your head. If you are demeaning yourself, if you are calling yourself a failure, if you are overly critical of the things that you are doing, take a step back and ask yourself, how would you talk to a friend if they were presenting you with the situation that you're in now? So, like, let's say you had to skip a training day or you missed a training day because you overslept or something like that. And then you began talking to yourself like, well, I might as well quit. I'm a failure. I'm no good. I don't know if you'll go that far, but you know your negative self-talk better than I do. So whatever that negative self-talk is. So once you've identified that, you take a step back, maybe take a deep breath, and then you start thinking about, well, if my friend told me that they missed a training day, what would I do? Would I talk down to them? Would I demean them? Would I degrade them? No, I'd probably get curious about that and be like, well, why'd you miss a training day? Well, I didn't set my alarm. Okay, didn't set your alarm. Pick yourself up, move on. I've seen you hit 99% of your other training days. Is this training day going to make that much of a difference? No, probably not. So in terms of the inner critic, a great way to sort of get away from that and step back is to ask yourself, how would you treat a friend if they presented you with what you were criticizing yourself over? Would you be hypercritical? Would you talk down to them? Probably not. I mean, if you would, you're probably not a great friend. Probably need to not watch this channel. That's totally fine. I'm going to tell you not to do that. But if you would talk to your best friend in a more kind way, in a more curious way than you would talk to yourself, that is a great way to reframe things and begin being more kind to yourself. Number three thing, uncommon thing talked about with perfectionism is avoidance or fear of failure. So what does avoidance and fear of failure have to do? Well, if you have sort of perfectionistic tendencies, you tend to, or I've come to find you have discovered that if you focus on a particular set of variables, you can be successful. You get certain outcomes. So to the detriment of other things, you focus on those variables and you choose not to do other things outside of those variables, which means this leads to never stepping outside of your comfort zone. If you got a six-pack eating sweet potatoes, chicken, and broccoli, maybe you stick to chicken, sweet potatoes, and broccoli to the detriment of sort of a variety of foods. Maybe you've discovered a particular style of training. Maybe it's starting strength. Maybe it's 5-3-1. Maybe it's the muscle and strength pyramids by the dudes over at 3DMJ. Maybe it's RP stuff, whatever it is. If you found a particular way that has gotten you an outcome that you've wanted, you might not be willing to get uncomfortable and try new things. How do we tackle this? First thing you want to do is to acknowledge the feeling you have and say it out loud. So if you're getting uncomfortable, if you're thinking about incorporating new foods, if you're thinking about trying new training strategies, and you feel a little bit of discomfort, you want to really turn your thoughts sort of inward and figure out what's going on. An example from my life is trying new foods. For the longest time, it was sweet potatoes, and that was, I think that's a staple for a lot of people in terms of fitness and bodybuilding. Sweet potatoes is, that's the go-to carbohydrate. Where I had to sort of challenge myself is, once I got out of sort of contest dieting, once I got out of cutting, I could transition away to more sort of calorie-dense options. Like I didn't need sweet potatoes all the time. My avoidance of these other foods was because, in a calorie deficit, a lot of other foods are a bit more calorie dense. Maybe there's more fats, maybe there's more carbohydrates, whatever it is that's making other foods more calorie dense. In a deficit, sweet potatoes are useful because they are filling and there's no fat associated with it, marginal protein, and just a good carbohydrate source that's filling. You're not on a contest diet. You don't need sweet potatoes, for half your meals, more than half your meals. I was avoiding other foods in an effort to maintain fullness. So what do? So the first thing you want to do is you want to acknowledge or say whatever you're feeling out loud. So if it's worry, so I'm worried that other foods are going to cause me to get fat, or I'm afraid to try other foods. Or it could be just as simple as saying afraid, worried, anxious. Say it out loud, and it allows you to sort of externalize that so that it's not going to drive your behaviors. Then the thing I like to do is sort of get yourself aligned with a personal value that takes you in a new direction, that takes you in the direction of something that is outside of your comfort zone. For me, I think I talked about it in a past episode, but that value for fitness and bodybuilding is challenge. Challenge is one of the values that sort of undergirds my sort of commitment to fitness and bodybuilding. I like to extend myself and try new things, and that is challenging. So in terms of incorporating new foods, whenever I feel any sort of discomfort, it might not even be conscious, just like I don't want to try this is what works for me. Whenever I get that feeling, I try and tap into that value of challenge and see if I can use it to refocus and create support for the new thing that I want to do. So identify the feeling, identify a value that allows you to stretch and get outside of your comfort zone, and then give that new thing a try. I think when we are avoiding something because we are afraid, often naming the feeling, tapping into a value will help allow us to step out of our comfort zone and away from perfectionism, and helps make us a more whole athlete. Number 4, compulsive behaviors. So compulsions can often reduce anxiety. Compulsions are really a double-edged sword here because they can reduce our anxiety, but they also reinforce any type of obsession or thought we have around a particular activity or habit. So for example, some compulsive behaviors around fitness. Now, this isn't necessarily pathology or anything like that, but these are some compulsions that we may see in our fitness journey. Excessive mirror checking, comparing yourself to others. With social media, we are scrolling, we are seeing people at various stages of their fitness journey. But, more often than not, I find that a lot of people, myself included, we're drawn to the people who are, closer to their contest day. We are drawn to the people who are closer to achieving sort of whatever our ideal physique is, and that can be detrimental in some ways. Other things include like repeated body measurement and weighing yourself multiple times a day on a scale. Now, while some of these things can be helpful, like weighing yourself, it can become compulsive when you're doing it multiple times a day. So if you find yourself weighing yourself in the morning, that's great. That's fine. Some people get away with successfully weighing themselves, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times in a week, once a day, first thing in the morning. I've done that before. It hasn't turned into a compulsive behavior, but some people move beyond that and they'll weigh themselves in the morning, and they might weigh themselves after their first meal. They might weigh themselves before their workout in the evening. They might weigh themselves immediately after that workout. And that's when I feel like it starts trending into a compulsion. What is the worry or anxiety that you are trying to relieve around weighing yourself multiple times a day? Or what is that actually giving you information-wise? We all fluctuate weight throughout the day. Additionally, unless you are tracking your water in a very specific way, we're going to have different levels of hydration. And with those different levels of hydration, regardless of how many times we weigh ourselves each day, and if we do that every single day, 4 or 5 times a day, our weight's going to fluctuate because hydration status, because how much food have we eaten that day, any number of things is going to cause our weight to fluctuate. So if you weigh yourself in the morning, that's awesome. That's great. That's not compulsive. Nothing like that. But if you find yourself weighing multiple times a day, outside of, athletic situations, really assessing for hydration status, and so, they know how much to rehydrate with outside of that situation right there, then it can turn into a compulsion. Remember, compulsions may have some underlying worry or obsession attached to it. If you find yourself obsessing over any particular things that lead to compulsions, go see a mental health provider. However, if you find yourself, wanting to weigh yourself a bit more, wanting to track certain things that maybe don't need to be tracked, maybe you find yourself doing a lot of social comparison. Here's what I like to do. Take 10 deep breaths and see if you can shift your attention from whatever it is you're focused on, whether it be scale weight, whether it be mirror checking, whether it be scrolling on social media, and see if you can just shift your attention from that to the air going in, and the air going out. If you can do that for 10 breaths, you're probably going to be able to shift your attention away from the thing that is causing you to feel a compulsion. And then from there, tap into an underlying value and head in that direction. So if we find ourselves wanting to weigh multiple times a day, aside from sort of, Socratic logical things like, what is the point of weighing yourself multiple times a day? What information are you actually getting from weighing yourself multiple times a day? If you can't logic your way out of sort of not weighing yourself multiple times a day, perhaps shifting your attention and focusing on your breath and getting more grounded in the present will allow enough space between what you're thinking and what you are feeling to head in a direction that more aligns with your values and goals. If you're experiencing any of these things, hopefully some of these tips can help you out. If you're interested in more of a deep dive into deep breathing, mindfulness, getting connected with your values, check out some of my other videos that might help you be able to navigate perfectionism. And hopefully, I'll see you in my next video where I talk about another mental skill that can hopefully help you along in your fitness or bodybuilding journey. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.